Hi, welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Now, I don't know what kind of recreational substances Rishi Sunak takes to pass those quiet evenings, but whatever it is, it must be bloody good stuff. His dealer must give him the very best, the creme de la creme of whatever product he is on, because he has come out today and said, despite all this things, everything that's going on, and despite the polling, and despite the fact that everybody tells him he's a loser, and despite just the sheer evidence of everything, he insists that the Tories can still win the election. I told you he's on something, and it must be good stuff. He hasn't got any kind of coherent grasp on reality, has he? He hasn't seen the polls. He hasn't seen the evidence of his own eyes. He hasn't seen his own members of Parliament rushing to leave as members, retiring as MPs because they know they're going to get so fully, royally shafted when the polls come on July the 4th. And just yesterday, Grant Shapps, a man who often goes by different names, himself said the Tories have got no chance of winning. And now Rishi's come out fighting, although fighting is a strong word. He's got as much power as an action man, and he's about the same size. But, he's there and he reckons that he can win. He's delusional. Let's take a look, because it's just mind-numbing, isn't it? Here goes. Right, and before we get into it, may I ask that you hit the subscribe button. We're so close to 17,000. Literally, I think it's 20 away. So hit the subscribe button. Help us get over that little target. And if you are someone who's already subscribed, do please check. YouTube get a bit shady and they start unsubscribing people without their knowledge or permission. Very naughty. And hit, of course, the like button, the big button down at the bottom with the thumb on it. That always helps to spread the news. Now, Sunak says the Tories can win the general election, but people's frustration is undeniable. Sunak is on something. I don't know what. Maybe he's had a word with Humza Yousaf's brother-in-law. Who knows? Anyway, Rishi Sunak gave a more optimistic assessment of the Conservatives' chances than the Defence Secretary Grant Shapps, who conceded that victory is unlikely. Unlikely? Impossible, I would suggest. Anyways, you see this from the Evening Standard. Force of habit. Anyway, Rishi Sunak has insisted the Tories can still win the general election after Cabinet Minister Grant Shapps said a Conservative victory is unlikely. I never believe a word Grant Shapps says. He goes by so many different names depending on what he's doing. You never know who he is. He's either deeply schizophrenic or deeply weird or deeply criminal. I let the people decide. I make no comment. That would be most inappropriate. Anyway, the First Minister, force of habit, haha, naughty boy. The Prime Minister, totally different kettle of fish, isn't it? Said he understands people's frustrations, but gave a more optimistic assessment of his party's chances than the Defence Secretary, who said that to claim the Tories are on course for a win would be trying to pretend that black is white. And yet that, of course, is what politicians do all the time. They tell you this is a success, or this has worked, or this is marvellous value for money. And we all know it is most certainly not the case. But this time they can't. It's just what is Rishi thinking? Anyway, as the party continues to languish behind Labour, and it says Labour in the polls and Reform in the polls, they're third, he said that Sir Keir Starmer lacked the courage of his convictions and suggested that his rival would find the job in Downing Street hard to do well. Well, you know, mate. You know, Rishi. You've made a right pig's ear of it. Asked during a huddle with journalists on the... Is that the collective noun? A huddle of journalists? Anyway, on the Tory battle bus... Battle bus? It's an action man, isn't it? Actually, no, it's the Barbie. It's the pink Barbie bus. My sister had one, not me. Anyway, asked what he thought of his political opponent. The Prime Minister said, what I'd say is Keir Starmer is someone who clearly doesn't have the courage of his convictions. Keir Starmer doesn't have any convictions. It's like the Marx Brothers, isn't it? These are my principles, and if you don't like them, I've got others. He doesn't know what a woman is. He can't define what working class is. Keir Starmer is... If anyone is more out of touch with people than Rishi Sunak, it's Keir Starmer. And by God, that takes some doing. Anyway, he went on. He said, talking about Keir, he said he's also not prioritising investment in our country's security. Says the man who's overseeing the biggest amount of illegal immigration this country has ever seen in its entire history. He says, I think that is deeply concerning as someone who's sat in this job for 18 months at a time when the world is more dangerous and uncertain than it's been since the end of the Cold War. Close the borders then. Go on, close the borders. Say anyone coming in illegally is a threat to national security and treat them as such. I dare you. You won't though, will you? One, you're a little wef puppet, and two, your balls are as tiny as your shoes. Anyway, he said it's obvious that the world's incredibly dangerous, and for someone who wants to be Prime Minister for our country, for not to prioritise investing in the country's security, I find deeply concerning, says the man, says Rishi Sunak. What an absolute arse. Do you know that there is only one party leader who stands up and says that he wants to close the borders and he wants to make it a national security issue? That man is Nigel Farage. That's who I'm voting for. I'll call it. I'll tell you who. I don't care. Don't care what you think. That's who I'm voting for. I know a load of people who are. Anyway, Mr. Sunak's comments came as Nigel Farage, launched Reform UK's contract with voters to add to the Conservatives' woes. The Tories are getting whacked, aren't they? Labour has an average 20-point lead over the Tories on 41%, ahead of the Tories on 21%, and Reform on 15%. That's the average poll of polls. We had the poll this week. Today's only Tuesday. I think it was Friday, wasn't it? They had the poll that put Reform into second place, a point ahead of the Tories. So, as it may be, the average is like that, but the latest ones are the other way. It's going to be close. It's desperate for the Tories. They know they're screwed. And they've done it to themselves. Well done. Anyway, speaking during a visit to the Centrica gas rig earlier on yesterday, the Prime Minister said, there's still 2.5 weeks to go in this election. I'm fighting very hard for every vote because I believe we can win. I believe you're off your tiny, tiny mind. Asked if he understands people's frustrations with the Tory party, with some voters deciding to turn to Reform, he replied, of course I understand people's frustration with that. I mean, it's undeniable, and I've been very clear that we've made progress, but there's more to go. What progress? You've made no progress. You've gone backward on everything. In fact, we should have much lower interest rates now. Why are the interest rates so high? The rest of Europe are reducing theirs, ours aren't. Do you know why, children? I will tell you. Are you sitting comfortably? It's because we're so much in debt, we need the high interest rates to keep paying off the debt, so that the money that comes in goes into central government funds. We are artificially high because the Americans are artificially high for exactly the same reason. If we dropped our interest rates, money would flood. Money would flood, and they need them high to pay debt. And that is it. That's the problem. And so we're all suffering because he, as Chancellor, decided we're going to do this, this and this and this throughout the pandemic, as is per instructions from the WEF, rather than saying, do you know what, let's just carry on as normal, because it's really only this, that and the other. Let's not privatise debt. Let's not take all these people and give them money and make the debt a public debt, so that the working man has to pay off the debt for these private companies. That's what he's done. He's privatised wealth. He's taken public money and put it into private hands and loaded the public up with huge amounts of public debt. It's wrong, and he done this, and that's why our interest rates are high. Otherwise, we'd all be a lot better off. Don't forgive them. Do not forgive them. This is what they've done. And then, of course, they do the backstabbing and he gets rid of Boris. That's what they've done. Don't forget, don't forgive. They've done it to themselves, and we are having to pay the price. He asked if a Tory victory was unlikely. He said I think that's the realistic position. He says he lives in the real world. He lives in what possible real world does Rishi Sunak live in when he is a non-tax-paying billionaire? He doesn't live in our world. Let's put it this way. Anyway, in a sign the campaign intensifies as it enters its fourth week, Shadow Paymaster General Jonathan Ashworth put a copy of the Tory document into the shredder at a hastily arranged press conference in London, claiming that is what Mr Hunt has done to the Conservatives' economic credibility, and he's not far off it. Not that the Labour have got any credibility in that front, but what that idiot has done has destroyed our economy and made us all much poorer, and we're currently getting taxed at the greatest level than we ever have been because of his bad ideas. And we are paying massively for immigration. Please get Nigel in. please close the borders and treat anyone coming in illegally as a threat to national security. We can deal with that in a very different way. Coming up. Richie is inhabiting one of those rarefied worlds where he doesn't get to meet real people. He doesn't understand the suffering, the poverty, the misery that his policies have enacted on people. He's sitting there and, sometimes he has to make economies. I'll only eat £1 of caviar this week rather than 2. I'll only fly business class instead of first class. Got to draw it in. I'll only buy 1 private jet. His family's got a private jet, That's why private jets haven't been banned, isn't it? Anyway, I shall stop there. Thank you very much for watching. Do please hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, leave a like, leave a comment, please share the video, and I'll speak to you later. Bye.